We are joined now by Eric Pincus. He covers the NBA for Bleacher Report. Eric, how are you this morning?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
I appreciate it. Appreciate the time.
Eric, I got to start here. I'm a huge Warriors fan, so giant homer here. Um, no chance they beat the Timberwolves, right? Like I'm not trying to talk myself into this. Like this is the end of the line for the Warriors this year.
I mean, I wouldn't say that. You got to play out these games, and the Timberwolves are really tall, athletic, playing really good basketball. But they beat up a Lakers team that maybe wasn't as good as some had thought, and so it's hard to just say, oh, because they beat the Lakers, they're going to beat the Warriors. You still have Steph Curry, who's the greatest shooter of all time and top whatever player of all time, and you have Jimmy Butler, who seems to be in the postseason just that guy. And I'm not going to. Draymond Green is super talented and mean and tough and the heart of the team. So yeah, I'm not going to say the Warriors can't beat them. I'm going to say yeah, they can. I don't know that they will, but they certainly can.
So it's interesting. There's this thing called championship pedigree, which we're all kind of familiar with, at least if we can Google it. Do the Golden State Warriors have enough of it left? And do the T-Wolves still have to find it where that could actually balance this series out?
Yeah, I mean, it's a real thing. I tend to be somebody who's skeptical in that you have to show me that you can do it until I believe that you can do it. So I didn't believe, for instance, that the Nuggets would be able to do it, and they did it, or the Bucks. But I believe that LeBron, when he won with the Lakers, could do it. I believe the Warriors could do it at any point. The Timberwolves haven't shown us that yet, and it gets harder. It gets harder every round you go. Now, they took a big step last year, and I know they made some changes. Karl Anthony Towns and brought in Julius Randle, Dante DiVincenzo, and whatnot. But the Timberwolves are, they have defense, they have athletes. Really, the size is, I think, the biggest part, the athleticism. And we might be seeing a change in the guard in the NBA where the older names that have been around forever, winning forever, Steph, LeBron, in this case, Jimmy Butler, who never quite won a title but has gotten to the finals a couple times recently, that maybe their time has come to these younger athletic teams. But, I mean, what Jordan won late, Magic and Kareem and all. You start going through history. Even Kobe Bryant was later in his career when he won. Steph, and the most recent one was late. There's something to be said for that championship pedigree that you mentioned, and so I'm not going to write off the Warriors at this point, not yet.
So as far as championship pedigree, there's another matchup out west, or potential matchup out west, with the top two seeds if they make it past the semis. That's Boston, who earned their championship pedigree last year, and Cleveland, who
Out east.
Out east. That I don't feel like we totally know what Cleveland is yet. How do you feel about the Cavs at this point without the championship pedigree, and I think with a roster that people maybe like but don't love?
Well, I mean, Darius Garland's been out with a foot
he
injury, I
matters.
believe it is, and so that's like taking away like one of your tires. You know what I mean? Like you could drive your car, but you only got three wheels. It's not going to be the same. And maybe they got a spare on. And I think Ty Jerome's been great. Sixth Man of the Year candidate. Going to make some money this summer. Happy for him. But Darius Garland is an all-star level player. And what it does is it creates this challenge where you can throw everything you have defensively to try to stop Donovan Mitchell. Now, he'll still get some. It might not be as efficient. But then while you're doing that, Darius Garland is going to do his thing, or vice versa, right? You stop Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell's going to do his thing. And then they have these big guys, Evan Mobley, Jarrett Allen. They have a ton of wings who can shoot. Some are better defenders. Some are better shooters. Some are they're all tremendous players. There's not a lot of championship experience. But this is a really, really good basketball team through and through. And again, they still have that natural skepticism where they haven't shown us yet. You got to show me that you can do it before I believe it. And we just saw the Celtics do what they did last year. And they've been knocking at this door for some time. So it's not like the Celtics didn't take the normal path. They did. A lot of teams, you start out, you're good. You get to the playoffs, you get bounced a little early. You get to the conference finals. Eventually, I mean, for them, they kind of sped it up and got there probably earlier than they should have. You get to the conference finals, you lose once or twice, and then you get to the finals. Either you win or lose, and either you get back and get another shot. They got there, they took care of business, and got it done this last year. So I'm happy for the Celtics, even though I grew up in LA. You learn to
Blasphemer.
you learn to put aside some of these things. I have a former student who works for them, so I'm happy for him getting a ring. And the reality is that obviously they have to get there first. It looks like it would be a tremendous battle. It looks like a fun Eastern Conference Finals. It looks tough, and I know the Pacers and the Knicks are going to do everything they can to upset them, and the Pacers already got a good kick in. So let's not go too hard on it. But if it gets to that, it looks like a fun series, and I'd probably pick, based on our conversation, this is how I felt before our conversation. I'd probably pick the Celtics just based on my own logic, but it's not an easy pick. I mean, both those teams can beat each other in a series.
Yeah, I am a diehard Lakers fan. I have been since '79, and I hate everything about the Celtics except for the fact that they're well coached. They've got a pretty good front office. They're good in the draft. They win championships, and they make good in-game adjustments. So outside of that, I hate the Celtics.
I hear you.
Eric, let me ask you something. We were having this conversation in the sports landscape. We were, debating GOATs, and I said, the NBA is the only sport that's different than Major League Baseball or even hockey, where the consensus is Gretzky. The NBA continues to go back and forth. NFL can land on a couple of receivers or a couple of corners. And it birthed into this conversation about only getting three things as somebody that's got to find predictors of success. You get tape, you get the mental makeup profile, or you get their performance testing. You only get one. If you wanted to find the greatest predictor of success in the NBA, which one would you take?
Oh, boy. Success in the NBA, and especially when you start talking about like the great level, start looking at like the GOAT, you have to be able to win championships, because you could have great players who don't win, and they will always be great players. But when you start comparing the greatest of the great, then you start to do some level of ring count, and you could look at, well, what about Bill Russell, who won in a different era when you only had a couple of rounds of playoffs and whatnot. But there's no way to, like, when I saw LeBron, my wife and I went to UCLA to see LeBron in an exhibition game when he was in high school, and it was cool, and it was great seeing him. In retrospect, it's a great memory. At the time, we're like, I don't know, he's like this big guy beating up on all these high school kids. It's like we couldn't tell, like, does this translate? And there are people who are better scouts than I, who have a more experience in this than I do in that aspect of it. I think there's a level, not ignoring the criteria, just you have to, of course, basketball, you have to have the height and the athleticism and all that. But there's an element of magic that you have to have, that Steph Curry had, that Kobe has, that LeBron has, that Magic, Kareem, Jordan. I don't know. I'm leaving out someone
Bird.
very obvious. Bird only won 3, and so now you start saying, well, Jordan doubled up, right? So, or Kobe won 5. Start going down. How did Bird win enough? And then there's an aspect that you have to consider with LeBron, longevity. Kareem had it, and really that's it. Like Jordan, he retired a few times. Kobe had good longevity, but he tore his Achilles. The last few years weren't quite Kobe years. Duncan is a guy left out. Duncan had an incredible run. He won titles in 3 different decades. None of the others can say that. So he's another one on that durability. So, but I mean, I think LeBron playing at the highest level, okay, they didn't win a championship this year, haven't won since 2000. He's still putting up incredible numbers, carrying teams. And if you're going against the Lakers, you have to uh, account for LeBron at the highest level and deal with a problem. He's a problem for other teams still at his age, and that's pretty remarkable. So, you're absolutely right in that it's an impossible task because it's subjective to say this is the all-time great in basketball. But I will say that the most right now, out of current players, it's LeBron, and then Warriors fans are going to say no, it's Steph, and so even that we can't even lock in. So it's a good debate, though. We could argue. I have argued it for hours. By the way,
would you take? It sounds like you take the mental profile, but I don't want to put words in your mouth.
No, I ultimately, because so I don't know where does the magic come from the heart, but in your criteria, I would say fine. Like you have to have it at a mental level. LeBron and Steph, they're brilliant human beings in this particular way. They're brilliant in many ways, but
something's clearly different between Josh Smith or Gerald Green and Steph Curry, right? So
absolutely, I was around Kobe for a long time, and he was
bless your heart,
rest in peace. Yeah, but he was absolutely brilliant. I've been around Kareem a little bit, and he's maybe the most brilliant person I've ever met. You know what I mean? It's like there's a level. I didn't really get to know Jordan very well, but obviously there's plenty before my time. And Magic in a different way is brilliant. He's not brilliant in the same cerebral way as like a scholar that Kareem is, but like Magic's ability to communicate and connect with people is beyond. It's like he's incredibly gifted, and it's not just what he does. He only played for, these are guys who were brilliant people who played on the court for relative short amount of time, except LeBron, who's like most of his life. But the brilliance in Magic, Kareem, different, but it's there. It's just different aspects of brilliance. So yes, I'd probably go mental makeup, but it doesn't matter if you don't have the physical gifts. I'm 5'7". I might be pretty smart. I might not be. It's debatable. We can
super
argue
gritty, man. But I'm 5'7".
Yeah. It was never going to happen for me. You know what I'm saying?
Eric, so I was asking this question earlier since we were talking about Curry and some of these other guys. Is there a player because we're watching the Warriors game last night, and Curry's only got 3 first half points. And you're like, it's kind of not going great, but Buddy Hield's going off. And I asked DB earlier, I go, can you think of another player in NBA history that is as feared without the basketball in their hands as Steph Curry?
Yeah, that's an interesting qualifier because Kobe Bryant was absolutely feared, but Kobe dominated the ball. And there were times they would get Kobe off the ball a little bit, but like mostly he would use his little snake sound to get the ball back, and he'd clap his hands, and like it took a tough player, I'm talking teammate, to not pass the ball to Kobe Bryant. Whereas Steph, and I've had this debate with many people, is Draymond's addressed it. Everyone has a different opinion on what position Steph plays. I don't even think Steph is a point guard because he does the most damage without the ball, right? Like it's when Steph doesn't have the ball that's the problem, because you gotta account for him. Like Buddy Hield is a good player. He's one of the best shooters of his generation, but Buddy Hield doesn't get all those shots if the defense is paying attention to Buddy Hield. They're paying attention to Steph. It don't matter where he is on the court. You're chasing him like all over the place. I've seen it up close. I've talked to players who have to do it, and it may be the hardest thing to do in basketball. And he's not this big. Everyone's big in the NBA except for maybe Yuki Karamura. I'm saying it wrong. Yuki on the Grizzlies, who's about 5'8" or 5'9", but even then he's taller than I am. But like Steph's not a big, huge guy, but man, you have to worry about him, and they're absolutely terrified of him. I will say that growing up, I saw how terrified folks were of Larry Bird, and he had
and
that
could
kind
do
of
it without
fear.
the ball.
Exactly, and because he wasn't the point guard, he was the recipient of a lot of pain, or generator of a lot of pain, especially growing up. I learned basketball watching, listening to my dad scream at the TV. basically Celtics Lakers in LA, and it was because Bird was such a bad effer, if you pardon me. And
we're digital.
and
You can say whatever you want.
but yeah, no, I'll keep it clean. But Steph and Bird have that kind of fear factor. I mean, there was an element of Reggie Miller had some of that too. You know, that he was a problem without the ball. So it's what's great about basketball is that there's a varied amount of ways that you can be brilliant. And we talk about the GOATs and why it's so hard to name the one. It's because the game is so. We didn't even mention Shaq when talking about the GOATs.
So Shaq would be the guy that I first mentioned that was feared without needing the ball.
Yeah, I mean, you had to build your team with a bunch of like 7-foot guys who couldn't even tie their shoes.
A lot of Chris Dudley's made a paycheck because of Shaq.
And their job was to go out there and foul Shaq, and Shaq couldn't hit his free throws, so that was just part of the strategy. And then people get upset when Kobe got to the line a zillion times, but it's like, no, you got into the bonus 30 seconds into the quarter because you kept fouling Shaq. And then Kobe just started driving every time he touched the ball. Shaq didn't need the ball to even hurt you, right? He just got fouled and then let Kobe do it. I mean, and obviously matchups mattered. Sometimes that wasn't the matchup, but a lot of matchups were just that. Shaq was just like, they're going to beat me up and Kobe's going to do his thing. And, I mean, I'm friends with Malik Rose, who was on the Spurs, and he's about 5'6", 5'7", even though he played a big position. And his job was to guard Shaq. He had a big body, and he'd just get low and use his center of gravity, and did a pretty decent job against him, considering the height disadvantage. But man, that was, it was like fearing for your life just trying to deal with the guy, and it was fun to watch. Shaq was as powerful a human being I think I've ever seen, and I've been watching this game since I was a kid. So, yeah, definitely.
Of the oft maligned stat sheet stuffers, I'm going to keep Lillard out of the discussion because he hasn't held in with never as much contentiousness as these other two. Who needs a championship more to be viewed differently historically? Russell Westbrook or James Harden?
I mean, I think Westbrook is viewed fairly. I mean, Harden's probably viewed fairly as well, but I felt like Harden was, covering him up. I'm in LA, so seeing the Clippers in Inglewood.
Tenants in common. That's what I like to call the clip joint. Tenants in common. I'm petty, Eric. I'm petty, Eric. I'm petty.
They got their own building.
I know.
Building. It's nice. I would say that Harden was incredibly unselfish this year, and the knock on Harden is that he's selfish. And I watched him carry this team when Kawhi was hurt. I figured he'd pack it in, and he didn't. He's an older player now, and he didn't deliver in Game 7 the way he would have liked to. He did in Game 6, and the team took away Harden, and you could take away what he does by taking away some of the driving lanes and making it hard on him, and et cetera, et cetera. I think his legacy is not viewed as high. Like Russ did the most with what he had. Everyone knows what Russ is, including, I don't know if Russ does, but the most recent comments he made were pretty self-aware. He's like a force of nature that's going to hurt you and help you in the same breath.
He just F's stuff up.
And it's fun to watch. It's frustrating to watch, all in the same play. And his brilliance is what it is. His averaging a triple-double for the first time since Oscar Robertson was his version of a title. And it's kind of appropriate for who he is as a player to be such a wrecking ball of a player, to be that. And he's won in his way. He's had an incredible career. I just was at Losing High School and spoke at a career day with the students there, and there's a lot of love for him there. There's a mural there, and he's done incredible things with his life. He was not heralded at UCLA. He wasn't supposed to be what he became very quickly. He grew fast. His athleticism off the charts. He's brilliant again in his own way, but he's also his worst enemy. And it's like even at his peak with KD and all those guys in OKC, it's like I have a wide open KD, but I could drive against 3 defenders and try to get a layup, and I'm going to do that. I'm just going to go as hard as I can. No one ever plays harder than Russell Westbrook, but I would argue some guys maybe play with a little bit more thought. His energy is just 100%, and sometimes that goes before he thinks it through. But yeah, James Harden's definitely the answer to that question.
You take Maury or Presti?
Oh, I mean, Presti, geez. I don't. I mean, that's not a question. Daryl's great at what he does, but like he doesn't.
You guys
Presti,
realize? See, everybody laughs when I say this. I used to ride with Presti. This was before he got cool and acquired draft picks. You realize he was vilified in OKC for a while.
Yeah, sure, and they made a choice, and I would argue the choice.
I mean, without Paul George, the Hall. We remember Presti and like him now. He went through a stretch though.
Yeah, I've known Sam for some time. I know Daryl too, and I think Daryl is great at what he does, but I believe in Presti's process more. And that's from getting to know them and how they operate and how they think. I just believe in the way that Sam thinks the game more than Daryl.
Eric Pincus, we appreciate the time.
That's
great
pretty
stuff
good.
As always. And let's catch up again soon. That was good. I like that.
Appreciate it, E.
All right, anytime. Absolutely. Thanks for having me.